Bank for Investment and Development, which we all like to call EBID, warmly welcomes you to the EBID President's Roundtable. Now, this is a convening, sometimes annually or biannually, of policymakers, key decision makers, private sector leaders, partners, funding partners, but great minds with one ambition: to move policy to implementation that is both impactful and definitely something that we can measurable. My name is Anita Erskine, and it's always an honor to be here because these conversations are not only crucial, they are pivotal, and they help you, our honorable viewers, our esteemed viewers, to be part of a conversation that is not just about EBID, is not just about one organization or another, but really and truly is about West Africa. Now, our theme today is financing integration in a fragmented region, making AfCFTA work for West Africa. We start off with the words of a great man. Now, behind every meaningful platform is a leader who is bold enough to ask the kind of questions for which he or she expects answers. Now, it is equally committed to the ultimate goal, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, a leader who says, something, it's not just enough to sit behind a desk. I like to be in front of my constituents. I like to be in front of the people who I deem the most important. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to bring to you the president of EBID. Please warmly welcome Dr. George Ajakum Donko, the president and chairman of the board of directors of ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. Doctor, please, the floor is all yours.
Good morning to our esteemed moderator, Anita, and distinguished speakers. And a warm welcome to all our viewers joining us for another session of this roundtable discussion. This morning, I would like to begin with 3 facts that illustrate what I consider West Africa's development paradox. First, despite decades of commitment to regional integration, only about 11.5% of our trade takes place within the ECOWAS region. Europe trades 66% within its own region. Asia trades nearly 60%. Second, a truck traveling the Lagos-Abidjan corridor spends on average up to 14 hours at each border crossing. During that time, it accumulates between $300 and $400 in daily idle costs. Multiply that across thousands of trucks, and one begins to appreciate the economic costs of implementation. Africa requires between $130 billion and $170 billion annually to meet its infrastructure needs, while West Africa alone faces a financing gap of between $50 billion and $100 billion every year. These figures tell a simple story. That is, our economies are growing, but they are not connected enough. The 2026 West African Development Outlook, a research document produced by the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, shows that the region grew by 4.8% in 2025, while inflation, debt levels, and fiscal deficits all improved. Yet, recent disruptions from the COVID-19 to conflicts affecting global energy and fertilizer markets have exposed how vulnerable we remain to shocks originating far beyond our borders. That is why today's theme, financing integration in a fragmented region, making AfCFTA work for West Africa, is so important. After it's more than a trade, it is an opportunity to create larger markets, strengthen regional value chains, and build greater economic resilience. Simply put, it is a lifeline in an increasingly volatile global economic environment. For West Africa, the goal is not only to trade more, but to produce, process, and create more value within the region. The challenge is financing delivery, roads, power interconnections, logistics platforms, industrial parks, and digital infrastructure are what transform integration from policy to economic reality. At the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, we are committed to supporting that transformation. In 2025, our commitments increased by 83% to $813 million. In the last 6 months, the board of the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development has approved over $1 billion for strategic projects across the sub-region. Since commencing operations, EBID has approved $5.7 billion for 389 projects, with nearly half directed towards infrastructure. But we cannot do it alone. Private capital and global institutional investors owe trillions. What they require is a cogent and clear plan of bankable deals with credible sovereign commitment to close the identified gaps in an accelerated manner. Our objective today is therefore straightforward. That is to identify practical cross-border projects that can attract investment, preferably anchor projects that can move from concept to financial close within 12 to 24 months. Projects that will accelerate integration and that regional connectivity is a catalyst for growth, competitiveness, and shared prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you all for your kind attention. Merci beaucoup pour votre aimable attention. Muito obrigado.
Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities.
And you heard it from Dr. Ajekum Donkor. The investments are a lot, and it's quite exciting if you ask me about it. The question is, where do they go? The question is, how are we ensuring that this impact that EBID is making is definitely measurable? But specifically to today's conversation, how do we take advantage of the AFCFTA in our region? Ladies and gentlemen, my guests today are Miss Rini Laye, JD, Chief of Staff of EBID. Rini, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Anita.
And we are matching, which means, you know, we are aligned in our thoughts.
I'm glad you saw my email.
Mr. Christopher Mensah-Yawson, Acting Principal Program Officer, Trade Facilitation and Development, ECOWAS Commission. Christopher, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful to have you in Accra. I know that usually you are on the other side with our brothers and sisters in Nigeria.
Feels good to be home.
Ah, of course. Jollof is on me today.
Oh, my.
Mr. Kobna Atabedu, a very good friend of mine, Yesimacher Pa, and he's a procurement, supply chain, and business transformation expert. Kobna, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Fantastic. We won't share our secrets here today.
No.
They don't have to know what we know. Yes. And finally, Professor Festus Ebo Turkson, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Ghana. Ebo, you are very welcome.
Thank you.
Fantastic. My distinguished viewers, both online, right here on Metro TV, across the continent of Africa, once again, welcome. Chris, I want to start off with you, focusing on Anchor Project as catalyst for regional integration. How do restrictions on movement of people and goods concretely increase trade costs and slow value chains, Chris?
That is, thank you very much. That's a very, $1 million question. We all know that free movement of goods and persons are very pivotal. And not just the free movements, predictability, reliability, cost effectiveness. All these are very pivotal for a very competitive market, and also to accelerate the economic growth that we want as a region, and even the development. Now, we just heard the president say that on the Abidjan-Lagos corridor alone, you spend about 14 hours moving goods from point A to point B. Now, let's not forget that each border crossing has got cost implications. And so if you multiply the number of borders you have to cross along the Abidjan-Lagos corridor alone, it adds up to the cost of doing business. Let's also think of the time. So if you are trying to have a complex value chain system and you are looking at your scheduling and it's taking 14 days, sometimes even more, and you cannot even predict, it throws everything off. And then now you are compelled to even have a buffer stock and lock up your capital, which otherwise you wouldn't have. So all these implications relate to price and cost. And guess who bears it? It goes back to the consumer. Let me give you a simple example. I was at the Semi-Krake border in 2019 on official assignment when the border was closed. That is between Nigeria and Benin. And I could see all the trucks that were lined up at the other side of the border because of the restrictive measure. Now, let me first admit that it goes beyond restrictiveness. There is also the issue of constraints, because restrictiveness and constraints come together to compound the situation. Restrictiveness is more rule-based, more governance-based, more regulation-based, whilst constraints are more resources and all that. So if you have even an efficient border post, but you are lacking the needed resources in terms of the personnel or the border agencies, that also delays the movement of these goods. And let's also not forget that we have both the commercial vehicles, that's the trucks, and also the small-scale cross-border traders using the same channel. Yes. And so it clogs the channel, the system. And then you have the cost implication accruing from these. So these are some of the issues that I can easily say that. And then let me also add that when it comes to restrictiveness, you are compelled when you trade in certain products to possess the rules of certificate of origin or phytosanitary certificate. All these are not free. They come at cost. They may take time to produce. And all these costs add up to the cost of doing business, which is eventually transferred to the customer or the consumer. One last example. Onions. We have a lot of onions. I just realized that Ghana consumes a lot of onions. And we're probably the leading consumer of onions in that region.
Wow.
And we have onions coming from Nigeria, from Niger. It will interest you to note that the transportation cost from Niger and from Nigeria, the difference is just 5,000 naira. And yet, when it gets to Ghana, the total price difference is about 30,000 naira. So it tells you that something happens along the corridor whilst it's moving. Let's even take into consideration exchange rates, volatility. Let's take 10%. Let's say 10,000 naira to that. Where is that 20,000 naira coming from? And it's because of illicit charges and things that happen along these corridors. So all these things make it expensive to do business in our region. And you realize that it is now that we are moving to digitalization, customs interoperability. Before then, things were very manual. And it takes you quite a long time to process these things, even through customs. Now there's SIGMAT and all these tools that we have implemented, so they help accelerate the movement, particularly when it comes to transit goods under the SIGMAT regime. But it's still not free.
You know, Kamla, perhaps it's important for me to bring this conversation to you. Chris has done a fantastic job of talking about the ultimate cost is borne by the consumer. So clearly, what increases the 5,000 naira to 30,000 or the $5 to $300 are the bottlenecks. When you look at this, the possible bottlenecks in the regional supply chain, from a private sector perspective, what are they?
The challenges are myriad. And I always like to look at the supply chain from the framework point of view. So Michael Porter gave you a framework that says that you have to get goods into your organization, through your organization, out of your organization, through your distribution partners to your customers. So at any point in time, goods are moving. Now, how do you move them? The biggest bottleneck in our sub-region is the road network, because unfortunately, we have only one transportation system that serves the sub-region. We don't have rails, we don't have inland water, we don't have sea freight. It will interest you to know that if I want to ship something from Accra to Port Harcourt, it has to go to Europe before it comes back, and vice versa. Meanwhile, they are just next door. And that is the modal system we have. So you only have to use roads. We haven't designed our roads with regional integration and regional transportation and the freight of goods as part of the design system for the roads. So you would notice that the motorway has deteriorated very fast, but only on one side. The side that moves goods from the port to inland is where you have the deterioration of the roads. When you are looking at the other side that is going back to the port, they are usually better because this side was not designed to bear that kind of load that it is bearing now. So the first problem we have is the weak logistics systems that we have. I have worked in an industry which was who deals in dairy products and perishables. So if I move a truck from my distribution center, it has to be under temperature control. And don't forget, when it comes to perishables on the move, if you see a refrigeration system, it is not because it's a deep freezer. It's only creating an ambient environment in the truck to maintain a certain temperature. The longer it stays on the road, the more it loses that temperature. So I can't afford to be on the road beyond a certain point. So if I I'm shipping to Abidjan, and I can get to Elubu, and I get to Elubu, the president mentioned 14 hours. Yeah. I have spent 2 days at the border before. After I had crossed Elubu and I got to the Abidjan side, 2 days, because 2 regulatory players are fighting jurisdiction over my goods. So if you have to go through that, how are you going to get that perishable good? It means by the time it gets to my cold rooms, it's lost temperature, it's gone beyond the acceptable phytosanitary standards, and that whole shipment must be disposed of, and that is cost to private sector. So it tells you the nature of the problem, and that is just one. The second one is the border and the regulatory unpredictability. So because the routes are bad, ideally you should be able to tell that if I set off, it will take 4 hours or 24 hours to get to my destination. I can't predict today, because personally, I ordered something I couldn't find in the Ghana market as an individual. I found it in Lagos. They put it took 3 days for them to get a bus to put it on as an unaccompanied cargo. They got to Cotonou, and for some reason, at the Cotonou border, it was held. 2 weeks, 10 days, it was sitting at Cotonou before it was released. Why? I don't have a clue. I don't have an explanation. But that on a small scale level, and don't forget, in our sub-region, our businesses are not large-scale businesses. They are all micro, small, or medium-sized companies. So if a micro or a small, medium-sized company is relying on regional supply chains to supply into their production system, and you're expecting input raw materials to come in for me to do production tomorrow, and it gets stuck at Cotonou for 2 weeks, what happens to my factory whilst I'm waiting? So that is the nature of the problem we have in the region. I can go on there. We have standard issues as well. So I gave an example of one instance where we have an HS code for a particular product, and in Ghana we use that HS code. It crosses the border to the other side, which is Francophone, and they are saying that don't use this one, use this one. How do I process it through Ministry of Trade on the ICOMS under this HS code? And then it gets there, and I have to wait for them to change it to align with their system before it can be accepted into their country. And these are some of the problems we have. Yeah. Then I spoke about the SMEs and their lack of structure, governance, financing, working capital. So they are undercapitalized to do the regional trade, because that gearbox I ordered, for example, because it's a small or micro business that is selling spare parts, I have to pay cash. So I haven't seen goods, but I'm paying cash. They are not doing letters of credit. They are not doing all those things that will safeguard my risks. They are not there. So I have to pay in advance. If it comes and it is what I'm looking for, God bless me. If it is not, what remedies do I have?
Start the process all
exactly.
Over again. Yeah.
Then also general lack of visibility. Yeah. We don't have the electronic data interchange systems that would allow you to know that this shipment has taken off, it is going here. Someone at the border should know that the shipment is coming in and it should be here at this time. You can actually track it as it's on the road. We don't have those systems there. So it makes it very difficult.
So many different bottlenecks. But Rini, perhaps that this is music to your ears, because then as EBIT, you are handling a lot of anchor projects that would help facilitate or ease all these burdens. But tell us how these anchor projects are defined. Are you looking at impact? Are you looking at readiness? Are you looking at bankability? What is or are the criteria?
Thank you for that question, Anita. So an anchor project must have all three. A bankable project without impact is just going to be a transaction. A project that has an impact but is not ready will not be implemented. So these are some of the considerations that we have at our level at the bank when we are looking at projects. A key example of this being a few days ago, we received a delegation from Taraba State, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and they came in to sign a $268 million project, an integrated package. It has an agribusiness component for a processing facility for rice, accompanied by 10,000 hectares of an irrigation scheme. We also had an industrial park being constructed, and then a portion of the proceeds are going to go towards a solar plant, 50 megawatt solar plant. So these are the kinds of integrated projects that we need to see. In terms of impact, you have a project that is going to supply electricity, expand to about 390,000 people, 200 public institutions. In terms of job creation, this is a project that from the development stage to the operation stage will create about 16,000 direct and indirect jobs. So a big impact in terms of what the project is going to do in that landscape. And then you also have something that is ready. By the time we signed this, feasibility studies had been done. Environmental impact studies had already been done. All of these factors have to come together for us to see the right type of anchor project. And it's when we have such packages that we see something that is scalable, something that can be reproduced in our economic landscape, so that we have regional value chains being developed. We are linking key sectors. We're doing agri-processing at the same time as energy. You know, and it's in this interlinking that we'll see the type of impact and what we truly call anchor projects. And again, going back to that readiness piece, it cannot be just within the conception or within the description of the project. One of the things that Dr. Georgie Dekumdonko, president of EBIT, just spoke about was really giving ourselves timelines. That 12 to 24-month window, that is very key. Or else we will keep having conversations about the key projects that we need for our region to really move forward, and they will just be conversations. We won't actually get to the implementation piece.
There will be conversations, but we have to get to implementation, and we have to do it the right way. Perhaps that's why I'd love to bring you in, because research will guide us. Research is essentially our compass. And you've researched extensively on trade integration. What types of cross-border infrastructure or perhaps trade facilitation projects would you say would have the greatest impact on reducing the costs that Chris was talking about, and perhaps even removing the bottlenecks that Kobna was talking about, and ultimately justifying the anchor projects that Rini has just mentioned in the ECOWAS region?
Okay, so thank you. As I listened to Chris and Kojo, the issues that I found in most of my studies were the issues that we were talking about. And for me, I've indicated severally on other platforms that not until we deal with trade infrastructure, this whole noise about after will not come to realization. It will just be a political talk and all of that, especially in West Africa. So when you look at the integration in West Africa and then in SADC, that is the South African Development Corporation, those are the two sub-regional trade and economic zones that are working. I mean, the others, for various reasons, are not working. But for ECOWAS, the enormous potential here has been limited by what I call the transport backbones. And Kojo mentioned some of them, he also mentioned some of them. We do not have roads that connect our cities and our people. I mean, even within our countries, the road network is so bad. And he was telling you how many days it would take him to cross a journey where in other parts of the world shouldn't take 8 hours, taking 2 days. And for every delay that you have in transportation, it comes with a cost. Especially for those items, especially because our comparative advantage is more of agricultural products. Even if you add value, you need to preserve. I mean, and so, I mean, imagine sending something from Accra to possibly Burkina Faso, and you get to somewhere along the Kumasi route, and then a cocoa truck has broken down, and for 12 hours, you are sitting in traffic.
Because there are no other routes.
Precisely. Then it becomes a huge cost. Look, if you take all the sub-regions in the world, sub-Saharan Africa has the highest trade cost. And that is why we are not competitive. It is not that we cannot produce quality goods, but by the time you produce the goods and it gets to the competitive markets, you've lost the competition. Your trade cost alone is about 200% of your actual ex-warehouse price as it moves out of your warehouse. And where can you be competitive? And so we need to look at our transport backbones, the regional ones. We need to complete and upgrade them. I'm happy we've seen what is going on now. We need to make sure that there is enough financing to complete that project. So it doesn't become a project that will get to a point and then it stops. Because people should move. If people do not move, the goods will move. And not only the roads, the rail network, I mean, is very important because rail is the best inland form of transportation to cut goods from one end to the other. Not even on the road. I mean, road, yes, that's what we have now. But for us to benefit from the enormous opportunity that after and even ECOWAS sub-region offers, we need to think about cross-border rail networks. Very important. Other countries are doing it. Other regions of the world are doing it. And so that when you are moving a good from Accra to Burkina Faso, it shouldn't go on the road. I mean, we should have a road line that connects Tema, Takrady, all these ports. Because we are fortunate in West Africa to have the largest number of landlocked countries in the whole world. I hope you know that. And therefore, they depend on those of us along the coast for their global trade. Why we are not taking opportunity of that to even create jobs and wealth in our country is something that has been baffling me for a lot of my research findings that I find. And so, that is one. The second one has to do with trade logistics, facilitation, and Chris mentioned most of them. I mean, why don't you have one-stop borders? You get there, you clear your goods, you should be able to move to other parts of West Africa without any hindrance. But our national governments are so stuck to revenue along the border.
I like how it took you a second to find the right word.
Precisely. I mean, they do not want to cede. They put up all the political talk, but behind the borders, things are not being done. I mean, talk to a trader who moves from Accra to even Lagos and let the trader tell you the stress the trader goes through. And so if I produce a good, and I'm going to give you this example, the distance between Accra and Nairobi, for instance, and Accra and London is about the same. Your fare to Nairobi is way higher than the fare to London. It will take you, at that time I was traveling to Gambia for a seminar, and my wife was also traveling to the UK. She got to the UK when I had not got into Gambia. And it is too expensive to make those travels. So when I produce a good here, and I have 2 customers, one in the UK and one in Gambia, I'll send a good to the UK, because it is faster, it is cheaper, and that is why we are not trading among ourselves. It's not that opportunities are not there, but it is too expensive to trade among ourselves. And so if we do not look at trade logistics to ensure that those policy-related barriers, and I'm calling them policy-related because it is policy that has do those barriers. Yes. If our governments will not put their political will to their policies to make sure that when we mean one border checks and a car leaves Tema and it's been checked for everything to go to Burkina Faso, nobody should stop the car on its way. We have trackers to track these containers. I mean, so they should move. I mean, when you look at Europe, EU for instance, transports move across the border just like you are moving from Accra to the central region.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody stops you.
Nobody stops you. The goods are going to a destination. They need to get there as soon as possible. But yeah, you get there, the customs will tell you that we've not been told we have to do this, so we are going to check. And at times they're haggling, like you said, over who has. These are all the trade logistics that impose cost.
Okay.
Third, energy is also key. If we are going to be competitive, we need cheaper energy in this sub-region. We need to harness the potential in the sub-region to generate enough power to support our industrial hubs and the firms that we cannot import goods and then retail them. I don't think that is the essence of the AFTA. It's not just trade, it's also production to trade. So we are not just saying that let me import goods into Ghana and then the goods I import, I'm going to retail them in another part of West Africa. We should be producing, adding value to what you produce here. There is no reason why if Ghana is producing fruit juice or Nigeria is producing fruit juice, we should import fruit juice from South Africa. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. We should harness the potential in West Africa for us to make the AFTA work. And I've said that if these regional economic communities do not work, the whole AFTA project is going to fail because charity begins at home. So if 17 countries cannot come together and trade more fluidly, how do they trade with other parts of the sub-region? So energy-related infrastructure is key. It's also something that we need to look at. Now technology is coming up. How do we take advantage of digitalization to reduce the cost of business processes? I mean, at the ports. Now Ghana is doing something that is good. You can pay your duties before your goods get in and all of that. But is that what is going on throughout the sub-region? So it's important that we focus on these because they are the reason why when I produce a good at my factory gate for $1, I have to sell it at $3, with $2 being the trade cost. And that is not well. If you take the EU, it's just 20% of their values that trade cost. So if I'm going to compete with a firm in the EU market, for instance, he produces at $1, I produce at $1. I can even produce at 50 cents. But when I get to the market, I'm going to sell at $2.50, and you can sell at $1.20. So who gets the market? Yeah. So these are the sort of infrastructure that we need to build within the sub-region. And we need our governments to be committed to put down some of their domestic revenue to facilitate the building up of some of these things.
Yes, Governor.
The F8 part is very critical because you see, when I spoke about the multimodal transportation, we spoke only about rail and all the land related. Now, to do trade in Africa beyond the West Coast, it has to be air because you can't do road. Now, the reason why F8 is expensive is because we run different countries with different civil aviation services, and to use everybody's airspace, you have to pay, and they set the rate. So if I'm shipping goods from here to Nairobi, for example, I'll go through 6 countries. I have to pay civil aviation in all these 6 countries, and then pay for landing in Nairobi and all that, and that adds to it. So if you are competing in the global market with someone who is shipping from the UK or from the US to the UK or any European market, where they take off from the US East Coast and then they are flying over the sea and they enter Europe, and Europe is one market, so it's one airspace. just that transport element of your cost build-up, the difference is so huge. And in other parts of Africa, because you don't have direct flights, it means you have to move the goods and it will transit in another location. And between the transit time, the layover could be a day or 12 hours or 8 hours. When the person who is going to London took off in 6 hours, they are already there. So you find out that if AFTA is going to work, our airspace must be unified.
And if I may,
Chris.
if I may,
Go ahead,
there is good wisdom or good reason in the AFTA trying to rely, excuse me, on the regional economic communities as the blocks for AFTA, which means that as a region, we need to up our game. And if each regional economic community in Africa does what they need to do, AFTA will work very well. Let me touch on this aviation charges. It will interest you to note that from Abuja to Accra, which is about an hour maximum, 1 hour 15 minutes flight, is going to cost you more than flying from Abuja to London.
Interesting.
And if you look at this, and you're a business person, your goods are stuck at one border post, and you say, you know what, let me circumvent it and just air freight some of the items that I need for my value chain, look at the cost implication as well. So, but the good thing is that ECOWAS has noticed these things and is working towards them. In fact, there is a community text that went into effect this year, beginning of this year. Now, what needs to be done when it comes to aviation to review those charges and all those things is for member states to start implementing those. Now, on energy, I will even go beyond the production or the generation of the energy. You know that once you generate energy, you lose some energy. In the course of transmission, you lose a percentage. And even at the time of consumption, there's also some loss there. We need to manage these losses along that chain. Other than that, we'll have a lot of wastage, and what happens is that somebody has to pay for the waste.
Wow. Well, you know what, I wish I could negotiate with Metro to have the entire day to talk about this, but I also want to move from what I like to call the dark side of the tunnel to the light. Ebo had earlier on mentioned financing and ensuring that projects that start end, and usually projects that don't end, it comes right back down to financing. So really, no pressure at all, but how can EBIT crowd in private capital in this, fragmented regional context, that we've been discussing?
So the role of financial institutions like EBIT is really that risk mitigation piece. It's one of the things Prof talked about earlier, that if you are trying to attract business owners to the sub-region and there's a lack of predictability, they're facing political risk as well, they have to come in with a structure that mitigates at least some of these risks to make them comfortable. I once heard a panel speaker say that sometimes our sub-region makes capital shy. So we have to find ways of making capital less shy. And for a bank like EBIT, the main thing is for us to have partnerships in place for risk mitigation. At our level, we have an understanding in place, a partnership with ATD. ATD is the African Trade Insurance institution out of Kenya. They are an A2 rated insurance institution. They've supported up to 88 billion USD in trade across the continent. So we have a partnership with them which looks into covering that sovereign risk piece, the political risk, and then also the credit insurance piece, which is at the project level. And I think these are key items within the space for mitigation and making people comfortable. You can see the results of this. Last year, the bank was able to commit about 813 million USD for projects. We were also able to raise another 500 million USD, 510 million USD, and 310 million euros from partners in international markets. So again, these are our efforts to reduce the level of hesitation from international partners when it comes to investing on the continent. And in terms of our capital as well, we've been able to bring in additional capital. Last year, we did about 100 million USD in capital mobilization. So these are all the things that have to come into play if you are going to make people more comfortable with coming to West Africa, in this case, to invest.
All right. Well, we're going for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we continue the conversation. I'm going to start off with Chris here, who is representing the ECOWAS Commission, and we're going to go deep into multi-country project structuring and revenue sharing models. We'll be right back after this.
Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities.
You are welcome back. This is the 5th EBID's President's Roundtable, proudly brought to you by the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. It's been a fantastic, a diverse conversation already. And if you're just joining us, we're live online, so you can go back and watch our Facebook, on our Facebook page to catch up on what has happened. Chris, I'm bringing ECOWAS Commission into the conversation now, specifically because just before the break, I had thrown this conversation about financing to Rini. So let's kind of move on from there. Can ECOWAS Commission facilitate multi-country project structuring, revenue sharing models? Is that a possibility?
Thank you very much. It is very much a possibility. Actually, one of the admirable features or qualities or characteristics of ECOWAS as an institution is its ability to convene, the convening power it has, and ability to come up with harmonized regulations, policies, and even projects across our region, because we have a regional dimension. Unfortunately, most projects seem to be more national-based rather than having the regional appeal. And when it's like that, it hinders the ECOWAS Commission from really intervening that much. Understood. But that said, we have, when we talk about our projects, we rake in other ECOWAS institutions like EBID. My dear sister has eloquently spoken about what they are doing in that space. I would also make mention of the PPDU, which is the Project Planning Development Unit, also based in Lome, which usually looks at infrastructure projects from roads, energy, water, and ICT. Now, at the Commission itself, there are a number of projects that we are looking at, which is multinational, cuts across our region. For example, we talk about the Abidjan-Lagos Corridor Highway, which is a dual 6-lane carriage from Abidjan all the way to Lagos. And these are 5 of our member states. And it's just about getting constructed. So we have that. We also have the Praia Dakar Abidjan link, which is a multimodal, because from the Praia Dakar gives you the maritime link, and then from Dakar to Abidjan gives you the road network. So And all these ones are being facilitated by the Commission. And we believe that once, these are just a few, we believe that once these are done, some of the concerns that have been raised here in terms of transportation costs, in terms of delays with all these movement of goods and persons would reduce. Now, let me even touch a little more on what I probably would refer as a softer project, which is the customs interconnectivity.
Yes.
Which we are also doing across all our member states. We'll talk about some initiatives like the African Trade Competitiveness Market Access, which looks at value chain development across the region, and it's even linking to other RECs under the AFCFTA. So there's a lot that the ECOWAS Commission is facilitating on that.
Governor, all these wonderful opportunities, they are for you. Well, I would say you are a key stakeholder, the private sector. You are an investor, you are, of course, you are a leader in the private sector. What conditions for you on behalf of the private sector make a regional project attractive, make it executable from your perspective? You've shared a lot of examples already, but what makes it attractive for you?
Okay. So for the private sector operator or the investor, three things are very important to him. What do I produce? How do I produce it? Who do I sell to? What do I make out of it?
Right.
What risks will I face in the process of doing this? And the bottom line is, what return do I make on the investment?
Right.
So if the project would facilitate my ability to produce, that means get my inputs in, turn it around, come out with a final product, and move it to my customer, I'm good. Because that is why I'm in business. So if I don't have energy, or energy is 14 cents per kilowatt hour, when my competitor is doing 7 cents per kilowatt hour, I'm out of competition. It won't work. So that energy sector must be fixed. If I put my trucks on the road, and between here and Lome, which is just about 3 hours to 4 hours, and it will take me 12 hours because I have to go and sit at a canoe or a flower and wait for customs processes, then I have a problem. So if I see any project that is going to give me that 4 hours or even better, well and good. I am at the mercy of transporters, and transport is now a major variable in my cost build-up. If I have multimodal transport opportunities, it immediately removes the monopoly of that mode of transport. I can actually tender for transport services, and air freight and rail guys and transport guys and everyone can come and say, I can give you superior service, and that gives me predictability, because then I can give an SLA to my customer in Lagos that if you place an order within 24 hours, it's at your door. So if these things are present, I can easily do business. I can make a good return. What are my risks? If the politicians will sit down and drink tea and have a conversation and sign a small paper and remove some of the bottlenecks.
Please, when you say politicians, don't look at Chris on camera.
Okay.
No, but continue, please.
And drink tea and remove the barriers at the border and sign. And then when they finish signing, they shouldn't just sign and then put it on the shelf. It should work on the ground. So when I get to the border, I won't be frustrated. Right. Because at the end of the day, if I send my perishable goods and I get logged at the port, it is millions of dollars that I have to write off, and my investors won't be happy.
Ebo, again, we always come right down to you because you are the key researcher and the data sits right in front of you. So let's talk about prioritizing. When you think of, and you mentioned it on this table as mentioned, transport corridors have been mentioned, logistics systems have been mentioned, border facilitation have been mentioned, and so many other bottlenecks that Kobna has mentioned, and of course interventions that Chris and Rini have mentioned. Let's talk about prioritizing any of these infrastructure to maximize trade costs reduction and also to accelerate regional integration within ECOWAS. Which one should be prioritized and how do we prioritize them?
Okay, so we need to look at the corridors, the transport corridors. And we should just see them as roads or rails. We should also see them as instruments of industrial policy. In other words, So what are we trading? What are we producing? So if we think that, of course, real studies have shown clearly that our competitive advantage in higher value addition is to go agro-processing, the automotive industry in terms of assembling, pharmaceuticals and others. So whilst we are building these industrial corridors, what we need to prioritize is which country would specialize in what. And
okay.
The transport corridor should be fashioned in a way that is going to support these higher value chain priorities that will help us to trade more. I mean, if because of our comparative advantage we don't trade because we produce similar goods, then all this discussion about infrastructure is meaningless. Trade will thrive when you go up or downstream, depending on the comparative advantage. So let me give you an example. So if Ghana is better at producing cocoa, for instance, I don't see why any West African country should be importing chocolates when Ghana can produce better chocolates and then send them there. So what sort of transport network would we need to support agro-processing of that sort to send these chocolates around? If Nigeria is better at producing oil and it has to produce any product out of oil, what sort of transportation network would we need to support the movement of such goods? So when we talk about the transport corridors, you didn't just see them as roads or rail, but you should look at them as industrial policy instruments. How do they facilitate industrialization within our sub-region? It's very important. So whilst we are prioritizing these corridors, that should be at the back of our minds. Especially where do the roads pass, for instance? I mean, it's not just a road network connecting these 5 countries. They should be positioned in such a way that these industries that we are hoping to leverage on will have easy access to these routes and the markets where the destination is in West Africa.
But well, let me just jump in here because you mentioned policy, and I would like you to touch on that before I move on to Chris and Rini. How can countries better align national trade policies and infrastructure priorities with regional integration goals under the AFCFTA?
Yes, because we know the assets that we have under the AFTAs. We know each country, what each country can do. So that's why in ECOWAS, and I like what Chris said, that we should make sure ECOWAS is working. And we've been doing this since the 70s. I mean, and we have done better than other sub-regions, to be honest with you. But there's still much to be done. So what, for instance, if it is pharmaceuticals that Ghana is better at doing in West Africa, and that the sub-region believes that Ghana should be the focal hub for that, what sort of corridors do Ghana need to send these goods all over the sub-region so that the cost of doing that is lower, right? So when I say policy, what I mean is that these countries have been together for a long time. We have the ECOWAS Secretariat there that is driving all of these. To what extent should our national policies come up with national priorities that feed into the sub-regional priorities?
Okay.
So that it's not like we are doing our thing on our own. So that we know if Ghana is producing a Kumfi juice, for instance. Is that the name? Eku juice, yes.
Yeah, Kumfi juice.
And we need to send it to the whole of West Africa. What sort of transportation network? What sort of cold storage facilities do we have along the route? Supposing it's going to Abidjan, do we need a cold storage facility somewhere on the way so that when these trucks get there and they need to recool their goods, they can do that and move on? Why do we site these facilities? Do we just site them anyhow?
Enable, you think that is doable?
Why it's doable? Other countries do it. It's doable.
Other countries do it, other regions do it.
Look, we pride ourselves in saying that we have the largest free trade area ever since the GATT was formed, even bigger than the EU in terms of number of countries. So we are looking at a huge sub-region with almost over 50 countries that are coming together.
Yeah.
That should let us begin to think about these things.
So let me come up, Pocho, before I bring you in. So let me just paint a picture and let me know if what I'm saying is right. Ghana, we've got cocoa.
Yes.
So essentially, we shouldn't import chocolate from Nigeria, so to speak. as an example. Or no, we shouldn't import chocolate from Ivory Coast.
Yes.
Because we are competitors as far as cocoa is concerned.
So Ghana and Ivory Coast will have to come together to decide that at what stage of the cocoa value chain would you? Is Cote d'Ivoire better at cultivating a raw cocoa than Ghana? Or is Ghana better? Then you move to the next stage. In terms of power, for instance, which country is producing power cheaper? So at the next stage of the production, which country will be better at producing the next stage? And then to the last stage.
So what do I do with, if you're talking about cocoa as an example,
yes.
Ghana, I have got cocoa, Ivory Coast, I've got cocoa. Yes. How do you decide who should maximize growing cocoa, so to speak, and who should maximize manufacturing chocolate?
As for the natural resources, we all have it. So you cultivate the cocoa. The next level is adding value to the cocoa. Okay. Turn it to cocoa paste. Is Ghana at a comparative advantage than Cote d'Ivoire in turning to cocoa paste? If Cote d'Ivoire is better, Ghana should produce the cocoa, sell it to Cote d'Ivoire for the value addition. Ghana shouldn't add value at the paste level because Ghana will do so at a higher cost than Cote d'Ivoire. Right?
ECOWAS.
Let me.
I feel ECOWAS is happy.
Before ECOWAS responds, because I would add something that he would have to respond to.
Okay, ECOWAS, pushing your turn.
Yes. So you see, when he's talking about creating this corridor, from a procurement perspective or economics perspective, basically he's talking about creating scale, economies of scale, and leveraging those scale. Now the benefit of scale is synergy. And so the private sector have actually gone ahead to demonstrate that it is doable. So in the last couple of years, if you notice, if you pick any Unilever product, you see that the labeling has been standardized. It is English and French. And so everything that is in English is in French. That is to ensure that that product can go into an English-speaking market or a Franco market. But everything is being produced from Nigeria. So if you go to Tema right now, Lever Brothers shut down a number of plants and they are producing them in Nigeria and they are shipping to all the West African countries. PZ has done the same. They shut down their factory in Tema and they are producing.
And it's a system that works.
And it is a system that is working. Just that it is working within a lot of challenges. So if you take that product that has been brought in, the price we are paying on the market is because it is costing us more. Even though from their perspective, economically, it is making sense because they have reduced the cost to produce. So he mentioned XWorks. XWorks is the cost as at his warehouse. So he's produced, they've done the business case you will build to be able to move your production from Accra to Lagos is because at an XWorks level, the unit rate of the product is far lower than if I produce in Accra. So once he's done that, now I can ship it to Accra and add that landed cost to it. And I come and put my margin in Accra and I sell. If at that point he's able to do all of that and is still competitive in this market, it should just tell you what the cost of producing locally was and what we're losing. So it's been done in the private sector, and there are blueprints that if government so wishes and ECOWAS so wishes, they can pick that blueprint and then understand how these multinationals were able to do it and copy it. The problem is usually seeding the revenue.
Okay, hang on a second.
Because shutting down the factory here means laying people off and all those things.
Exactly.
So when it comes to seeding that advantage you have to someone else, even though the synergy will benefit all of us, you lose somewhere, you gain somewhere, but you lose somewhere. Normally, we don't want to lose somewhere.
Thank you. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. Chris, I'm not sure if you came here prepared to answer these kinds of questions, but and I'm so sorry, but we're live, so whether you like it or not, from the ECOWAS Commission's perspective, it sounds to me like these are potential commitments that can be implemented, or these are potential commitments that can, that can be implemented. What would it take to translate examples like this into concrete implementation?
Thank you very much. And I'm excited about this discussion. And I get excited more when I see the private sector so determined to get things done. And academia also supporting with research and all that. Because without the relevant information and data, you'll be groping in the dark and you know what to do. Money, so the thing is this. ECOWAS is ECOWAS of the people.
Right.
So it is in ECOWAS's interest, and as part of our integration and economic agenda, for all our member states to do well. and for all our citizens to do well. And that is one of the reasons why the Free Movement Protocol was put in place. Right of entry, which means visa-free to any of our member states. Right of residence, which means you can reside in any of our member states. And right of establishment.
Establishment, yeah.
Which means you can undertake any legal enterprise in any of our member states. So if a business moves from Ghana to Nigeria, and a Ghanaian feels that, you know what, I can go there and take advantage of this market, it is legally possible. The good thing is that ECOWAS sees a regional space of about 400 million people. The question is, which country is willing enough to take advantage of this market size?
Let me make a comment to that.
Before,
hang on a second. Let him land kindly, please.
Each country has got their value chain priorities, and that is determined by the country itself. We have one at the regional level, but each country decides what is their priority in terms of their value chain. And so if we are making provision for the infrastructure development, for example, this corridor, Abidjan-Lagos corridor, 6-lane dual carriage. These 5 countries along the corridor, how is each country positioning itself to better take advantage of this corridor? So that it is not just a highway corridor, but it's a smart and economic corridor.
Right.
And that each member state, your segment of the corridor should be your key area of thinking, how can we tap into this and make better use of it?
Okay.
And the issue of scaling is pivotal.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have to compete against ourselves. We only need to be competitive as a region so that we can adequately compete with those outside the region within the AFCFTA space.
Okay.
I also have a comment.
I was just going to ask you, yes, Rini, to come in, please.
I think it's interesting that we are having this discussion, and it really speaks to the importance of some of the projects that we have on the table. Because we shouldn't neglect that this is actually quite a fluid conversation, something that Chris has alluded to. Because we have to think about the fact that once certain infrastructure developments have been made, economies will respond. You know, in advanced economies, you see that if you are building a car, for example, maybe it's assembled in America, but the brakes came from Japan. Yeah. The car inside technology is from Samsung in Korea. And they all come together because of international trade, people have been able to specialize. Yeah. So to what extent are we also allowing the infrastructure to influence policy from that end? Yeah. If we have a working system to where I know I can produce a rubber part or even the bottles that someone needs for his Ekunfi juice in Accra, and I'm in Nigeria, will I be forced then to be making my bottles while also making the juice in Nigeria? Not if we can have projects to complete these roads, if there are bridges, if it's for sea link or maritime link, then we'll make sure that, okay, even at smaller levels, we can truly see the type of specialization that naturally would come about in the market if we were able to really foster competition with some of these infrastructure developments.
Fantastic, really. Chris, before you continue, Abel, you were itching to respond to something that Chris had said. Kindly.
So whilst the ECOWAS is doing its best for persons to move freely, I don't think our national trade policies allow that. I've had so many occasions to educate Ghanaians that when Nigerians come here to do business, they shouldn't be prevented from doing business. Last year, we saw Ghanaians go to markets to sack the Nigerians from the market, which was totally illegal according to ECOWAS protocols. But because of political economy, our politicians keep quiet because they believe that Nigerians come and take business from them. But they've forgotten that within a sub-region, you can move freely and do legal business in any of the countries. But you see that we have some old trade laws that indicate that certain activities are only done by Ghanaians. Once we moved into ECOWAS, we are looking into after, those laws are no longer supposed to work. And they should harmonize all of those country laws. So you see, the promise is there. but the policy on the ground doesn't allow us to tap into the promise.
So
I like that comment.
That is why you don't have to use the word illegal, because that GIPC law, which has not been changed, basically says that nobody comes from outside to come and do retail trading.
Yes.
But there is an exception.
So, you see, that is why I said that when I believe that the ECOWAS Parliament and then Africa Parliament should lead in some of that. That's one of the reasons why those parliaments were set up. So basically, you go into a situation like this, you come up with a regional treaty, we all sign to it, and you, the members from that parliament, are supposed to come back to your country and harmonize your laws such that, because as long as that law has not been repealed,
it's illegal.
It is still legal. So it is legal.
Yes,
and people would enforce it. But until we have made it redundant, it becomes effective.
Let me add something to this, a little more light. Under trading services, which is the service component of trade, mode 4, there are 4 modes. The mode 4, which deals with temporary location of residents or expertise to go somewhere and work, it is negotiated. Okay, so when, for example, under the AFCFTA, we are negotiating the Trading Services Protocol. It behoves on other countries to say that Ghana, this particular regulation, it is not helping liberalize your services sector. Can you amend it to A, B, C, and see what Ghana can do? So if Nigeria or any member state for that matter, particularly those outside our region, see that as something not allowing us to liberalize our space enough, it is up to them to bring it up at the negotiation table to say that, can you liberalize the space because of A, B, C, D, E? Now, let me also say that under the negotiation of the AFCFTA, particularly trade in services, the idea is this: whatever commitment a member state has made at the WTO, the least you can do is to match it.
Right.
But the idea is to really enhance whatever commitment you've made at the WTO. So it is necessary that even whilst we are having negotiations, that is why it's important that the private sector participate in all these local discussions, forming common positions for negotiations.
But you see,
Komna, let me ask you a question.
COVID taught us something.
Yes, COVID did teach us, all of us, something. But Komna, specifically, where do regulatory inconsistencies disrupt supply chains? In your comment about COVID and then giving that response.
The biggest one is customs. Customs. It's a nightmare to go through customs. And we've all alluded to the fact that we can have one common customs process. So ideally, if I'm shipping to Lagos, if we had a common customs platform, for example, we can agree that Ghana will do the valuation, which is a pre-shipment procedure. And I always say that I don't mind if Lome will put their customs officers in the facility in Accra. But at the point of departure, customs should be harmonized such that once customs have done all the export processes and accepted the goods into the system, and the truck is logged and the tracker is put on it, it should not stop anywhere. If its final destination is Apapa, it should head straight to Apapa without stopping. Because every time they stop and they have to open it, especially if it's supposed to go under control temperature, I'm losing temperature. Every time it stops and you are opening it, you are changing the seal that has been put on it and putting a new one. My security is compromised. Every time you stop and someone opens it, a regulator wants to take a sample, a chemist wants to take a sample and go to his lab. And I have somebody ordered 100 pieces, I've shipped 100 pieces. It gets there and it is 95. Contractually, I have undersupplied. I would face penalties as a private sector operator. So these are practical challenges that I'm facing when I have to go through all these hoops. And if we take those hoops from there, I'll be good.
We hope that these will be resolved very soon. I'll explain to you why. One, all our member states, ECOWAS member states, are signatory to the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. In addition, they are signatory to the Kyoto. So these two already sets the legal framework for them to do these things. Now, further, ECOWAS has the common external tariff, which helps us position ourselves as a customs union. And so we know how to relate to third-party countries when we are dealing with them. The ETLS, ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, is to help us within our space. So if I'm bringing agricultural produce from Togo to Ghana, I don't have to pay any taxes or any duty for all those things. Okay. There is also customs code. ECOWAS has come up with a customs code that is supposed to guide the application and implementation of the common external tariff. So at the commission level, all these provisions have been made.
All right.
So what happens? I'm not done with the issues I'm doing.
We'll continue with your issues. Yes, Chris.
So to move it further, because with all these things, we realize that there's still the human interface factor, which creates some issues and bottlenecks, and that is why we further implemented the SIGMAT, which is just what you are asking for. So that if the goods leave and they are transit goods, they don't stop anywhere to the point of...
Commoner, I'm keen, hang on a second, kindly, please. Commoner, I'm keen for you to finish highlighting your problems. And then really, I'm going to come to you with the question of sovereignty. I mean, now what is clear is one region, but hugely fragmented. So many regulations, so many different policies. Commoner, you are giving me a long list of...
So after customs procedures, you come to product standardization. So if you take this drink, for example, and you look at the label, you see that it gives you the chemical, the mineral composition, who produced it, and all that. So it's in English and in French. It's not standardized. So not every label in this country is like this. If we start standardizing, because you see, because of our SME business environment, I can produce a product without the intention of it going to Nigeria. But somebody would see an opportunity in Nigeria and would put it, a bag of Ghana must go bag, fill it up and move it to Nigeria to go and sell. It gets there and the labeling doesn't meet the standards in Nigeria. So we have to standardize our labeling for all products such that once it crosses the border into Lome, it will meet the Francophone requirements. And you go into Nigeria and it will meet that environment. The next one is our logistics and transport regulations, axle load standards. We need to harmonize it. We design our roads based on our axle load standards, but our landlord countries which are using our ports as their transit points have different axle loads, and you notice that our roads are going bad because their axle load requirements allow for more load to be on a track, and we haven't designed our true roads to be able to bear that kind of load. So it is destroying our roads, and eventually it makes the government unpopular. So the government, looking at all these, would begin to put bottlenecks in. My question to ECOWAS will be, if a member nation fails to comply with those standards you set, what happens? How do you crack the whip? Because we learned that from COVID, when nations began to look at their interest in crisis, and not regionally or global trade, all these treaties were put to the back burner, and nobody could sanction anybody for it. So for a businessman, it's an existential threat.
Chris is going to answer that question, but Rini has to come in because we have a burning conversation, or we have a burning question about sovereign guarantees being structured across all these multiple countries, and how do you do it in a credible way?
Yeah, so I just wanted Commoner to get through his laundry list so I could also take note of them.
I have more. You want?
We'll come to that. You know, you have to answer some of them. Yes,
every private sector laundry list is a list of bankable projects for me to keep in mind. So, but from on our end, one of the key solutions to the problems he presented, and we started that conversation earlier on, is to have a community guarantor. the framework for this is already in place. There's a framework where if there's a community guarantee from the insurance piece, as he was saying, each time his truck stops, he has a security risk that he's facing, delays for his clients, and also potential loss of his products. If we have a working community guarantor system, which is something that the bank is working on, EBID is working on developing in partnership with Afrexim Bank, we're actually pushing to roll out as soon as we can. Once your good gets on a truck in Abidjan, if it's going to Lagos, that is it. Everything that is done in Lagos, it is closed and it's not opened again until it gets to Abidjan with this single community guarantee system. So this is going to be a key aspect of facilitating trade. It's something we've seen work in COMESA. I think one of the examples people always give is that if we are looking at the regional blocks, what is so different about ECOWAS? And the truth is, we just have to adapt to our very own concepts or our very own context. But we've seen it work in COMESA. This is actually in place. It's a $185 million facilitation project that is already working. Afrexim Bank has set up and it's working. So we are also working towards putting a similar partnership in place to clear a lot of the bottlenecks that Kobna mentioned. And one of the things that will be key in setting this up really is to harness what we have, the information that is shared. One of the things Chris mentioned was the SIGMAT. It's a database system where we are sharing information on our transits in between countries. But I think for now it's just 9 countries, if I'm not mistaken. So to expand that, to make sure we're covering all 15 of the ECOWAS countries, and to have a single guarantee system, that is going to be a key solution to this problem. And it's something that the bank is working on in partnership with Afrexim. And I think one of the things you also mentioned is from a risk perspective, what is happening in terms of security, right, and at each stop. Because I also was wondering, if I am a producer and I'm coming in and I know that at each stop I have to open my trucks and I'm sending internationally, I have to explain all of this to a client. Mm-hmm. And the client may, for that reason, not be comfortable coming to Africa for that particular good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, so these are the things that we are thinking about in terms of the community.
Chris, you have not been released. We haven't let you go that easily. I needed Rini to also weigh in. But I think Kobna asked a very, very vital, crucial question.
Yeah, and I'm excited to share with Kobna that, you know, ECOWAS is made up of French-speaking countries, English-speaking countries, Portuguese-speaking countries. We used to have 8 French-speaking countries. Now we are 5. These 5, though they are members of ECOWAS, belong to what we call the UEMOA group as well. That is the West African Economic Monetary Union. Okay? And they have their own standards, regulations, and things they do. When it comes to axle load, it used to be the case, because if I belong to a UEMOA space and my axle load says that, okay, I can use such tons, X amount of tons, and I'm moving from Cotonou through Accra to Cote d'Ivoire, the question is, am I going with the UEMOA policy, or I'm going with the ECOWAS policy, because there's Ghana involved here, and Ghana is not a UEMOA country. So before 2022, that was an issue. But since 2022, the axle load policy has been harmonized. So there shouldn't be. The challenge now will be implementation. Now, on the issue of standards, let me share that ECOWAS is bringing up what we call the ECOMAC.
ECOMAC?
Yes, ECOMAC. Mm-hmm. That is a quality mark, trademark. So that if you produce a good, if a product is from Ghana, originated from Ghana, has gone through the standards and everything in Ghana, quality certification is good, you have the mark on it. When it gets to a market outside Ghana, but within our region, it should not be subjected to their standards again.
Yeah.
And that is a harmonized.
And that is it in effect now?
It is not in effect now. The EcoMark has been developed.
Okay.
The logo is there. What they are doing now is identify laboratories across the member states that can be very well equipped to issue those things. Okay. So when all these things done, some of these nuances here and there will be addressed.
Chris, I have a question from someone online called Ghana First, and the question is, this is Anita, good morning to you too. I'm enjoying the conversation. Please ask ECOWAS, what is the single biggest barrier preventing West Africa from turning integration plans into bankable projects? The single biggest barrier preventing West Africa from turning integration plans into bankable projects. And I think maybe you might also want to answer, Chris.
I don't think that, because Renee here has told us a lot of the bankable things that they are doing. And if something does not meet the requirements, nobody is going to bank it. Because not that you think that, oh, I want to produce bottled water, and so you should get funding for it. No. It has to go through a rigorous PPP. Even if it's a PPP arrangement, it's got steps that you have to go through and make sure that it qualifies everything before it's done. Now, I can understand maybe what he's also trying to say is that what are some of the key stumbling blocks that is preventing ECOWAS from enforcing some of these policies and these good things that we have? I can understand that. And that is also because we don't have a very effective regional enforcement regime. And it's simply because in our treaty, the 1993 revised ECOWAS treaty, it does not make provision for ECOWAS and its institutions to enforce community text in our member states. Even though Article 5 of that treaty encourages, Article 5.2, I think, encourages member states to abide by all these things that they are signatory to. But you and I know that implementation, as we've all said eloquently here, has been the challenge. So what we need to do is to see how even community court decisions cannot be enforced. So ECOWAS court passes judgment, and I can't come to Ghana or Togo and go and see that, okay, this thing is done. So we need to look at what we give to ECOWAS for ECOWAS to effectively champion some of these causes, like it's done in the EU and other places.
But what's your research telling you?
It's telling me that our governments are the reason why it's not working.
Just the governments?
Yes. He sees our ECOWAS Commission, very good ideas. We all espouse those ideas. The political will is not there. That's unfortunately, that's the situation. And we know that we need to commit about 5 to 7% of our GDP every year to investment in the sub-region. ECOWAS Bank cannot do it alone. Our national government should have a skin in it. How many of them are prepared to do that? They'll meet, they'll have a good time, they'll speak long text, everything. Beyond that, nothing happens. And I know the ECOWAS Commission gets frustrated at times. I mean, and like he said, there are no system of enforcing what the governments put their pen to. So they say this, and then they go back, and nothing happens.
Let me add to what you're saying, and this is very crucial. And it's because we are more of an agro-based region. All our member states are part of CADEP. In fact, at the ECOWAS level, we have the West African Common Agricultural Policy. Under CADEP obligations, each member state is supposed to commit 10% of the annual budget towards agriculture.
Precisely.
How many of our member states have done that?
None of them.
Political will.
Yes.
Political will.
Yes.
That's it.
And if I may come in, sorry.
Vinny, please, by all means.
I think one of the key pieces is, for me, it came down to three things, and two of which have been mentioned. One of them is that harmonization piece, and then what you also mentioned in terms of the political will. But I think the third piece is also giving people the tools. Sometimes we have very good ideas in place, in terms of what we want to see, agri-processing, huge projects that can really change the face of the regional landscape. But the infrastructure is just not there. One of the things Kobna mentioned earlier is that if his cost of energy is much higher compared to someone producing elsewhere, it doesn't even make sense for him to start the business. And I think that's going to be the third very crucial piece. And it's also an opportunity for all stakeholders to come together. Like was mentioned, the development finance institutions cannot do it alone. They need partners both from public and private sector with the will to really push for the development of some of these key, not too commercial, may not make you so much money projects, but in the long term, very good investments that will show up really well for our future economic results.
We call it public goods. It's only the government that should fund it.
Thank you.
They are not going to.
I was going to say that, you see, the private sector, she can't pay the day. Yeah. The money goes to where it makes sense.
The two of you will become best friends from here. Kobna, I have a question for you.
And I hold them to standards.
And ironically, the three of you are wearing the same color. But Kobna, I have a question for you from one of our social media followers. Ms. Anita, please ask the supply chain expert, how do startups like mine, I have a business about 3 years old, how do we benefit from all that is being discussed today? Because honestly, I am extremely confused.
Fantastic. So I just mentioned that she can't pay the day. So when a businessman sits down, he has cash, he's ready to take a risk. He scans the environment and wants to see an opportunity. There must be a need somewhere that he wants to address. But he should be able to address it within a context where if he puts 100 cedis in, he would get 150, so he can take his expenses out and make a margin. And if he doesn't make a decent margin, it doesn't make sense. And if he puts 100 in and he'll get 98, then he's not even touching it. That is where it is not bankable from the investor side. So for a SME, what you need to do, which is one of the things that is non-existent, is to have a database. For example, today, when I'm consulting for my clients on the trade side, and someone wants to either import or export, there's a database that I go to, and I don't want to mention it, but it gives me every information I would need about trade into America and out of America, trade into India and out of India. But we don't have a database like that here.
Yes.
So for a SME who wants to go regional, there should be a database where he can go and he will see that there's opportunity in Nigeria for cashew or for that or for that. And then he would begin to look at the value chain and see what do I need to be able to produce this? And how do I get it to the customer in Nigeria? And if it makes economic sense, he takes advantage. If that is done, the next thing is capacity. So for example, our farmers, as our group, we produce a lot of pineapples and mangoes and all these things and want to ship them to the European market. Before the European market will accept those goods, you must meet their rigid standards over there. So I spoke to two friends who are in farming now, senior corporate execs who have resigned, they are in farming now, and both of them were undergoing an audit 2 weeks ago because they want to ship their products to the European market and they must meet that standard. We need that development, that training. There is export development, GECO, Ghana Export Development something. Yes, they are Ghana's export development organization which is supposed to build capacity. We must build capacity for SMEs to be able to take advantage of these sub-regional opportunities for them to be able to.
Ebo, you've got a question here. Anissa, please ask the professor, how do we get access to his research information?
Oh, they are online. I mean, so I have over 30 publications on regional integration, all of that. So if you go to the university website, it looks for my name. You'll find the publications there. Yeah.
Another question for you, Prof. I don't see how Ghana and Ivory Coast are going to share responsibility over cocoa because they keep competing with themselves about who exports the most cocoa. So can he focus a little bit more on how that would work in his estimation?
I mean, that competition is not relevant. I mean, who exports more doesn't really matter. And what we are talking about is the value chain. So if it's cocoa paste to the next level, who is better at producing it?
Yeah.
And that's the example Kobna gave you, that if it will cost $1.20 to add value to cocoa into a paste per ton, but it will cost $2 in Cote d'Ivoire, there is no reason why the firm should set up in Cote d'Ivoire. They should set up in Ghana, export the cocoa to Ghana to add value to. And then it's even possible that I might go back to Cote d'Ivoire after the cocoa paste if they are better at making the chocolates. I mean, that's what is done elsewhere. I mean, if you look at even the US and the trade that goes on in North America, for instance, and like she gave you an example, some of the cars that you find in the US are made in Mexico for a reason. The Americans can do it, but they see that part of it, a part of the vehicle has to be made there.
Yeah.
Because it's done better, and then US will do other parts of it. That is what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about who exports more cocoa. And this fight between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire about who exports more, of what relevance will it be to its people?
Again, right.
You know, we need to think about building regional value chains.
Precisely.
Because if one of the things that COVID taught us is about creating resilience as a region,
Yeah.
okay? If we didn't have the informal traders who were just moving 1 bag, 2 bags here and there, during COVID when there was a lot of lockdown, food security would have even been an issue.
Yes.
So we need regional value chains that can support everything that we're doing as a region.
Yeah.
And that is going to accelerate our integration
Precisely.
and our development as a region and make us even more competitive. And we should also try and do away with the mindset where we think of quality only when we are exporting to our large trading partners. We in the space also need to consume things of good quality and of good standards. Let me now go to Makola and find products that have been rejected entering into Europe on Makola for me to consume when it was produced in my backyard. That is a bit a kick in the guts, for lack of a better expression.
Enforcement.
Rini, you've got a question here. How do I find out more about EBIT's projects?
So, similar to Prof, we have a very extensive website, www.bidcebid.org.
Sorry, Rini, please say that again, please.
It's www.bidcebid.org, and you can find out more information about the bank there. We also have details on our processes for asking for a loan, the checklist and the documents involved. We host webinars regularly. If you're following us on LinkedIn as well, we have a lot of information available on our LinkedIn page. We also have a Facebook page. So whichever social medium you are on, you can find us there and get more information.
Find that information. Okay, with only 6 minutes to go, we have a big question that goes to all of you. Komnan Pochata, 6 minutes, which means technically a minute and a half, if my mathematics serves me right. Rini, we're going to start off with you. My big question, what is the one high-impact project that should be prioritized within the next 12 to 24 months to accelerate regional integration, and why?
I will save you time because I've already mentioned this. I think the key for us is going to be this community guarantor project I mentioned that we're working on with Afrexim Bank, operationalizing that as quickly as possible. As I mentioned, there's a similar structure already in place in COMESA, and I think if you are very familiar with the trade system, you know it's quite easy for someone doing business in Kenya to expand to Tanzania. And because of this framework that is already in place, that's what facilitates. So for us, a key project is going to be this community guarantor system. But a second thing is also really pushing our infrastructure projects. The more we've gone into discussion, the more I've realized that anything that can be done by EBIT and similar development finance institutions to cut back the time for them logistics of moving goods from one section of the region to the other is very key. So those are two-pronged approaches, pushing out more of our infrastructure projects and then making sure that we can cement the community guarantor partnership with Afrexim.
Thank you.
So look out for that.
Thank you, Rini. Chris, what about you?
I would go one soft and one hard. The soft would be digitalization of the various processes, trade processes, even the biometric ID card, making them interoperable and readable, the ECOWAS payment, cross-border payment and settlement system, which is comparable to the PAPS.
Yes.
That is also something that is key. We need to see how we can do it. Now, when it comes to traders within our space, a greater proportion of them, about 60 to 70%, are small-scaled. And we know that digitalization is mainly focusing on those who move volumes and all those things. So we need to do something that will support them. And that is making sure that we set up border information centers with its accompanying lanes as part of a comprehensive simplified trade regime, so that when they get to the borders, their processing is easier, simplified documentation. They don't compete with those huge trucks using the same lanes. They have services available for them that if you need somebody to help you fill a form, border information centers are there to support you. And those key things are very, very important as we try to accelerate the implementation of the ECOWAS Infrastructure Master Plan, which includes the railway links, the road networks, and the maritime links, and even the airspace.
Okay. Now, what would you say?
Similar approach to his. If there's one project that needs to be done for this to be successful, is the trade corridor, the transport corridor.
Right.
That's it. But if you are looking for something that can be executed in 12 to 24 months, it can be the road. So then it's the digitalization. Create the database. Train the SMEs, because you need the players to interact. So we need to identify the SMEs, we need to trade them, we need to create the database that would allow them to get access to information, to be able to do their exports online and do all those things. So once we can nail that one, within 12 to 24 months, we should be able to nail that. Then, when it comes to the road implementation, my question for you will be, you see, if we leave it to the individual government, competing interests will not let them do it. If IBID and other development partners will come together and own the trade corridor, you can have it as one big program or one big project and break it and implement them in each market and drive it from the center. That way, government doesn't have to compete with its interest to do that, because they will always go on the back burner. But if we need it to work, it means you would have to lead in that one, run the project in each market. So if you have to do the procurement tenders in each market, do it in each market, and break it up into lots and award them to individual contractors. They can all be working at the same time, and within 36 months, the whole corridor from one end to the other end will be executed.
Let me add, give you a little bit, just 1 second. 1 second. The Abidjan-Lagos corridor is following a similar approach. There's a management committee, ALCO management committee, that has been set in place to do that, to manage it. And there are concessionaires around that. And I think it's going to be build, operate, and transfer. So I'm sure after 30 years or thereabouts, then they will transfer it to the national governments for them to...
Then I have one advice.
One more?
Whilst you are designing it, they should not run through the existing towns and communities.
No.
They should run outside of settlements.
Yeah, in fact...
So there won't be interference.
In fact, in Ghana, there's going to be a tunnel somewhere in the mountains that a study is already being done as part of the route.
Sounds like music to my ears. Ibo?
You've said it all. I don't have much to say, but to say that I think that political will should be there, especially to harmonize our custom processes and procedures. One port should be something that we should be looking at, so that when any truck leaves any of our seaports, it should move to its final destination without any hindrance. I think that is something that our governments can do, and they should take advantage of data technology to do that. Yes.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had in the studio with me Professor Festus Ebo Turkson, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Ghana. Ebo, thank you so much. I've also had the Procurement, Supply Chain and Business Transformation expert stroke specialist of the decade, of the century, Mr. Kobna Atabedu, a great friend and a brother to me. I've also had the Acting Principal Program Officer, Trade Trade Facilitation and Development from ECOWAS Commission, Mr. Christopher Mensah Yawson. Thank you very much, Chris. Lastly, I believe the organization that has held this up, the representative of that organization in the person of the Chief of Staff of EBIT, Miss Rini Layi JD, joining us for this 5th EBIT President's Roundtable. I want to say a special thank you to my great brother at EBIT, Angelo Dadzi, to my wonderful sister Anita Sambadala, and of course Natalie Lawson, the team that has helped prepare and put all of this together, of course with the rest of the team as well within the EBIT infrastructure. If this is the first time you've heard about EBIT, it's the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. A lot of information is online. Go check it out. These conversations, this roundtable is designed to bring the information to your doorstep. Because if I may say so on behalf of EBIT, there is no point having all this information at the high level when truly the actual custodian of all of this that we're talking about is you, the citizens in ECOWAS. So from me to you, it's been an honor hosting and navigating and bringing you this conversation. A big thank you to Metro TV and all my guys and girls behind the scenes. They make this so beautiful. They make it happen. Big thank you to you, Josiah, Nat, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this program. Hopefully we get to see you again, but please keep the conversation going on our social media platforms, and we will ensure that whatever it takes, this information continues to come to you. My name is Anita Erskine. This has been the 5th EBIT President's Roundtable. It's an honor to serve you. Have a wonderful and safe afternoon. Goodbye.
And there they are. The squad is ready, lined up, ice cold, focused and prepared for national duty. Every bottle in position, every